Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to The Pulse, your source for all things gaming news, updates, and game releases. My name is June, and today we've got another packed episode. We'll be covering a ton of layoff news and a couple of data breaches. We'll be going over some new updates with Ubisoft, then ending the news with some quick updates that you should know. We've got a ton to cover, so let's get to it. Let's open up the news today with industry layoffs. There's a bunch of them, so let's get started with Motorsport Games. Motorsport Games has been trying to secure more sources for funding, but it looks like it's just not happening. After doing some digging around, it looks like Traxion, a former subsidiary of Motorsports, states that there's going to be around 10 employees getting laid off. On October 4th, news had started circulating that Motorsports Games has now listed themselves up for new ownership or a potential merger. They've also scheduled a special meeting for all stockholders that will take place on October 25th. This meeting will be an attempt to buy back 950,000 shares of their stock. This will generate about $1.5 million in funding that'll hopefully get them over this hurdle. The second company on this list of layoffs is Antstream Arcade. In a statement to GamesIndustry.biz, Antstream has said industry-wide challenges and an internal strategic shift in focus is what's leading up to the layoffs. There wasn't a number attached to how many people were let go. All we know is it's a small number of folks. Antstream will be offering support to those who are affected. There was no mention as to how they'll be supported, but they will be supporting them. Our next studio is Sharkmob London. The studio has confirmed that there will be layoffs coming down their pipeline, but did not mention how many people were being let go. In a statement to GamesIndustry.biz, Sharkmob is currently in the consultation phase of their process. Ultimately, this will determine how much of a reduction in staff will be needed. They provided a statement which I'll read. As you know, our industry is facing challenges, meaning we must adapt to focus on the right opportunities as a business. Our team in London has been working on an unannounced game for some time, and it is with regret that we now have to announce that this project has been cancelled. The decision to cancel the game unfortunately means there will be a reduction in the number of people we can support in the London studio. This is an incredibly difficult time, and our focus is to provide the support and guidance to those potentially impacted. At this point, you might be wondering what games has Sharkmob made that I might have played or at least heard of. So there's Vampire the Masquerade Blood Hunt and their new game Exoborn that's set to release sometime in 2025, which thankfully isn't affected by the London team's reshuffle. I'll list the Steam pages in the description below. Exoborn looks pretty good, and I'm personally looking forward to that release. The fourth studio in this list is XR Games. The developer behind VR games like Hitman 3 VR Reloaded and Zombieland VR will be starting the process of laying off around 72 employees. That would be the majority of their staff. XR Games CEO Bobby Thandy has confirmed to Game Developer that there will be layoffs. He mentions that XR spent many months looking for alternatives, but in the end, this was the result. At the time of the original news release, October 4th, XR was still at the consultation phase, which would determine the next steps. We'll give an update when we hear more. Our next studio is unfortunately not layoffs, but a complete shutdown. Studio Black Flag, aka Black Flag Games, has been completely shut down. Digging into this was sort of wild to me, only because of how it played out. So let's start with the studio declaring bankruptcy, which they explained as communications between the studio and its publisher breaking down. Then right after that, the French government was like, well, that sucks for you. We're shutting you down because you don't have any present or future funding. That's wild, no? Black Flag supposedly had concerns during the summer that they may have to shut down, but the past few weeks confirmed it was inevitable. As for their new game Orphanage, it looks like they're trying to find a way to release the game in the current state that it's in. Black Flag made it clear that if they did find a solution, it won't be a polished product, but it will play better than the demo they released a few months ago. This next company is one we've reported on previously, and it isn't quite layoffs, but maybe something a bit worse. In an article on Bloomberg, it's been revealed that Bandai has taken some huge steps to cut costs. This comes after Bandai has cut some games due to low demand. Back in June, we covered Bandai's financial troubles and the cancellation of Blue Protocol. Check in the corner for a link to that video. Based on Bloomberg's reporting, Bandai's taken a traditional Japanese corporate tactic by utilizing expulsion rooms, or, in Japanese, oidaishibeya. Sorry for butchering that. These expulsion rooms are pretty much rooms where employees work in with nothing to do, which essentially forces the employee to leave the company on their own. This tactic is used by Japanese companies operating in countries with really strict labor laws. Since April, it's been reported that roughly about 200 employees have moved to these rooms and about 100 people have resigned. And of course, Bandai has tried to squash any rumors of these rooms and trying to get employees to resign. In their own statement, they said the following: "Our decisions to discontinue games are based on comprehensive assessments of the situation. Some employees may need to wait a certain amount of time before they are assigned their next project, but we do move forward with assignments as new projects emerge. There is no organization like an Oidai Shibuya at Bandai Namco Studios designed to pressure people to leave voluntarily." I'm not quite sure if I believe it, but we'll see what comes of the remaining 100 employees that have been assigned these rooms, or from what Bandai says, haven't been reassigned projects. So this is the last studio on our list that's having layoffs. It's actually pretty surprising that Riot Games is laying off an additional 32 employees. In an X post, co-founder Mark Merrill shared an update on how League of Legends is evolving. Unlike most layoffs in the industry, even the ones that I've covered today, Mark states that this isn't about reducing money or restructuring because of money. Instead, it's a restructuring to make sure Riot has the right expertise. He also says on X, while team effectiveness is more important than team size, the League team will eventually be even larger than it is today as we develop the next phase of League. For Rioters who are laid off, we're supporting them with a severance package that includes a minimum of 6 months play, annual bonus, job placement assistance, health coverage, and more. IGN has reached out to Riot for more clarity, and they received a response from a Riot spokesperson that confirmed that 32 employees were impacted during this round of layoffs. So here's a super short list as to who was laid off. It was 27 development team members and 5 employees from the publishing team. On top of the severance packages, the spokesperson also stated that the individuals that were let go also have the opportunity to apply for other roles within the company. This year, Riot has let go of around 560 employees, which accounts for about 13% of their staff. This is the latest information we have of layoffs to date. We as an industry have seen about 13,000 layoffs across the board this year. That's huge. Alright, let's move away from the industry layoffs and closures and jump into data breaches. So our first company that's had a data breach was Red Barrels, the studio behind the Outlast series. So let's tackle the obvious question, what happened? So on October 2nd, Red Barrels publicly announced that they had a cybersecurity event. From multiple sources across the web, it looks like data revolving around Outlast was compromised along with some personal information surrounding Red Barrels' studio, such as employee information and things like that. Now, if you've been enjoying Outlast, player information was not compromised, so you have nothing to worry about there. Cybernews, a cybersecurity and tech news outlet, used the tool to pinpoint details of the event and have handed that off to the appropriate authorities. Red Barrels also has confirmed that the investigation surrounding the breach has completed, and there will be a huge impact on their production timeline. It'd be safe to say that any upcoming releases will for sure be delayed. If you're interested in the cybersecurity side of things, I'll post the link to Cybernews' news post on Red Barrels below. So the second studio to have some news surrounding data breaches is Game Freak. Yes, Game Freak, one of the 3 controlling bodies of the Pokemon franchise and the primary developer of Pokemon games. They've come out with a statement about their relatively recent data breach that came out and said there was unauthorized access to their servers by a third party. This breach happened back in August 2024, and from their statement, 2,600 items of the personal data was stolen. Now, we all know the games industry has a bad habit of secrecy and false transparency, but the scale of this breach was so big, it blows my mind that it's been 3 months since the breach and it's only picked up traction about a week ago. From multiple media outlets, the items that Game Freak mentions in their statement ranges from full names, addresses, email addresses, and phone numbers. From Polygon specifically, they mentioned that online communities like the PokeLeaks subreddit have been on fire with circulated leaks, like unreleased Pokemon designs, featured prototypes, and old source code from previous games. Outside of the initial statement, there hasn't been much updates regarding the leaks. As these leaks have been spreading like wildfire across the web, I'm pretty sure we're going to see Nintendo step in soon and start slamming down whatever hammer they got. In other news, on October 6th, 343 Industry made a huge announcement before the grand finals at the Halo World Championship. By the way, congratulations to the HCS 2024 season winners, Space Station. 343 announced several things in a 7-minute-ish video, so let's break that down real quick. So first, the 7-minute video opened up with a heavy emphasis on developing an Unreal moving forward. This also acted as an informational on Project Foundry and the new dawn of Halo. This is a big announcement because 343 has been working in an archaic homebrewed engine called Slipspace. Multiple top leaders of 343 emphasized on working in Unreal will open up new possibilities for the franchise in the future. Then, we have 343's rebranding. For some historical knowledge and why this is a significant change, we have to look all the way back in 2007 when Bungie and Microsoft parted ways due to negotiations breaking down. After Bungie's exit, Microsoft kept all the rights to the Halo franchise, but they needed a studio to continue the projects. What's the point of having the rights if you don't really have anyone to work on those projects? So that's where 343 Industries enters. And another interesting fact, did you know that the name 343 Industries came from the Halo character 343 Guilty Spark? After 17 years and a boatload of history behind it, 343 is shedding the old with a rebrand to Halo Studios. This is big news for the studio and a welcome change for fans. So here's a quick update for the Civilization fans out there. Civ 7 developer Firaxis is partnering up with the Shawnee tribe to ensure accurate representation in the new Civilization 7 game. Back in Civ 6, the representation of the 19th century Cree tribe was blasted by the modern-day tribe leader for misrepresenting their peaceful and anti-colonial culture. So Firaxis said, alright, we learned our lesson, let's get it right with Civ 7. Firaxis isn't only leaning on the Shawnee tribe to help get things right, but they're digging real deep into the language, culture, and history of the tribe. Firaxis also has enlisted the current Shawnee tribe chieftain, Ben Barnes, to consult on the game. A new head honcho has been found for Xbox Game Studios. Alan Hartman announced on the 14th that he will be stepping down and retiring. Hartman has only held this position for about a year, but he's been with Microsoft since 1988. With a huge background that spans decades, he is respected in our industry. One of the biggest ventures with Microsoft is the founding of Turn 10, the studio behind the Forza series, which spans about 13 games total. Like I mentioned previously, Hartman will be retiring, and his replacement will be Craig Duncan. If you're not familiar, Craig Duncan is the big boss of Rare, the studio behind classics like Battletoads, Donkey Kong, and more recently, Sea of Thieves and Everwild, which we're still waiting on a release date for, by the way. Duncan will fill the role by focusing on Microsoft's large portfolio and studios and investing in new IPs. And speaking of Xbox, there's some cool news coming down that pipeline. So in November, you'll officially be able to purchase and play games from the Xbox Android app. Recently, there was a court ruling against Android/Google where the Play Store had to be opened up to third-party apps. This in turn allows us more choice and flexibility. So I'm not sure if you remember, but back in 2022, Epic started several lawsuits against the big phone OS holders, aka Android and iOS. Here's some background around that lawsuit towards Google, just in case. Epic basically accused Google of dominating the mobile market, and that in itself was an illegal monopoly. The court obviously agreed that it was a monopoly and forced Google to open up the Play Store. So what's this mean exactly? So like I stated before, come November, the Xbox app will be updated with the new incorporated changes that will allow you to purchase and play said games. The tech nerd in me is really interested in this, so if you're interested in a walkthrough or how this works and what the limitations are, which it's an Xbox app, so you know there's going to be limitations, let me know in the comments below. All right, so let's get to the important stuff, I suppose. Ubisoft has had a rough week. You know what? No. Let's say Ubisoft has had a rough couple of weeks. Last week just happens to be the worst of it, I think. So in previous polls, I had explained that the union that a bunch of the Ubisoft employees are part of in France are staging a strike to basically go against the whole return to office mandate that Ubisoft is putting in, with really no communication to the employees or anything. It's just one of those things where they're just like, you know what, you're going back into the office for 3 days a week. Tough. Deal with it. And basically the union's like, well, okay, so let's negotiate this because, you know, that you're kind of changing the lifestyle of a lot of people who have been used to working remotely. I guess as of today, October 16th, those negotiations have fallen apart. And there's about 700 employees right now that have started to strike against Ubisoft out in France. So with that in mind, There's a lot more to cover that happened last week. Where do I start with all this? So let's start with the ongoing lawsuit. So apparently there's 2 players that are suing Ubisoft for sharing their data with Facebook via their Pixel Helper tool. So let's get down to how this happened exactly. So in a nutshell, if you've ever gone to websites in general that allow you to sign in using different methods, like let's say Google, or you can use your Discord, or you can use Facebook, for example. Websites that use that, they actually use a third-party hook or an API or another authentication method. In the case of Ubisoft, they use Facebook and they use Meta's Pixel tool, which basically allows them to authenticate against Facebook and create credentials and all that other stuff. It's a little bit kind of more complicated in the IT realm. So if you're interested in that, I can send some links. Just put a comment down below and I can send that over to you. But anyways, so this is a really common practice now in modern day websites where you can authenticate into other people's websites using this method. I guess somewhere in the middle of that, Ubisoft had collected personal data from these 2 players and gave it over to Facebook. Now, the argument here is that Ubisoft didn't do any extra steps like notifying any of the players that, hey, we're going to be capturing your data. We need you to consent on this. If you don't, then don't use this authentication method. Use something else. Use your email or anything else like that. It sounds like the end goal of this lawsuit is they want Ubisoft to immediately remove the Pixel tool from its website, or they want Ubisoft to start putting out a pop-up or anything else like that that says, hey, look, if you're going to use Facebook, we need your consent. You're free to decline it, but that means you won't be able to use this method. They're also looking for Ubisoft to kind of anonymize video game titles in the URLs and any metadata that is captured with using, the different authentication methods. So again, that was kind of an oversimplification as to what the lawsuit is. If you are interested in this, I have put the full lawsuit in the description below. Check it out. So that's the lawsuit piece that Ubisoft is going through. The second punch is the prospect of Ubisoft with the help of Tencent taking the company private. So back on October 4th, there was talk that the founding family behind Ubisoft, the Sharkmob family, were looking to Tencent for some help in taking the company private. Now, you're probably asking, what does Tencent have to do with Ubisoft? Well, if you didn't know, Tencent actually has about a 9% stake within Ubisoft. And Tencent is pretty stacked when it comes to funding and all that other good stuff. But anyways, so Tencent, they were brought into the conversation because they're shareholders and Ubisoft needed kind of more advice as to what they could do. Bloomberg had originally reported that both parties were speaking with advisors after Ubisoft's stock fell about 54%. And that happened a couple of weeks ago, I believe. The goal here was simple: stop the excessive bleeding and stabilize the stock. The huge sell-off of stocks and the underwhelming performance of every high-profile game that Ubisoft has touched or has released recently, that caused people to freak out. They thought, Ubisoft was a company that's pretty much headed to the chopping block at this point if they can't get themselves out of this mess that they're in. So after the news broke of this rumor of the company going private, the stock price actually rebounded an additional 26%. But again, a stock that rebounds doesn't mean that they're in the clear. Yves Guillemot acknowledged that there is some change that needs to happen within the company. And that also includes the cultural shift that's happening at Ubisoft. So I opened up with the strikes that are happening right now in France. And he's acknowledged that there needs to be some change within the company. How he's going to get there, we don't know. So yeah. Another significant change that was mentioned by Yves was that they are no longer going to do timed exclusives on the Epic Games Store. Rather, they're going to actually revert back to day one launches on Steam only. And this is for PC releases, of course. On October 7th, IGN posted an update from Ubisoft. The statement that was issued to IGN was pretty vague, not going to lie, but it acknowledges the media reports on the 6th. And it reads, Ubisoft has noted recent press speculation regarding potential interest around the company. It regularly views all its strategic options in the interest of its stakeholders and will inform the market if and when appropriate. The company reiterates that management is currently focused on executing its strategy, centered on two core verticals, open world adventures and GaaS, or Games as a Service, native experiences. So ultimately, we'll see how this pans out. There's a lot of uncertainty around Ubisoft right now, and it's just really best for us to keep an eye out on any changes or, any stories that do come out revolving around Ubisoft and the changes that they're making. Now, for the cherry on top of all this drama that's happening with Ubisoft, the final thing we wanted to share with you in regards to Ubisoft was that the vice president of Rainbow Six, Mr. Cameron Lee, he has departed Ubisoft. Lee joined the Rainbow Six team back in 2022 after working as the VP for Activision. We couldn't really find any information as to why Lee left his position, and Ubisoft doesn't seem to be looking for anyone to fill that role, looking on their website, open jobs and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of the cherry on top. You have a high-level executive that's just left the company. Man, that was a lot. But as you know, there's most likely going to be more. I'm pretty sure we're going to see a lot more news and updates come through for Ubisoft. So make sure you're subscribed. And we'll report it when it comes in. All right, so to end off our news segment, we're going to do some rapid fire updates and information we think you should know. First, we've got pre-launch and preload times for Black Ops 6. Look on screen for those details. Preload times across all platforms will start on October 21st at 9 a.m. Pacific or 12 p.m. Eastern. The official launch will be on October 24th at 9 p.m. Pacific or 12 a.m. Eastern. If you ran the beta, your PC specs should be fine, so don't worry about that too much. Just make sure that you have about 110 gigs of storage for the game. It's kind of big. Also, prior to you launching the game, make sure you grab the latest AMD and NVIDIA drivers for optimized performance. We'll see you guys in-game on the 24th. Next, if you're interested in the PS5 Pro, pre-orders are now available via Amazon. Look in the description below. And a little bit of news or updates, Next Fest is live on Steam, and that's running until the 21st. Check out the celebration of upcoming games like Delta Force, AI Limit, and more. And last but not least, Dragon Age The Veilguard preload has begun for Xbox X and S. Preload going live for PS5 will be on the 29th at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. The game will be officially released on October 31st. And that wraps up the news portion of this week. Next up, new game releases. And that wraps up this week's episode of The Pulse. If you've gotten to the end of this video, thanks for sticking it out with us. Consider hitting that like and subscribe button. We'll catch you on the next episode. See ya.